call to order. Regular meeting of the Planning and Zoning Commission. Today is Thursday, July 19th, and the time is 6:03. Mr. Harmon, will you take the roll?
Chairman Pranzo.
Present.
Commissioner Schopel.
Present.
Commissioner Schmidt. Vice Chair Frost.
Present.
And Council Liaison Hawkins is also present. We have a quorum.
Thank you, sir. Would you all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. Moving right along. Discussion, approval, disapproval of the minutes of the regular meeting conducted on June 21st, 2018. Do we have any comments?
Mr. Chairman, if I could, please. Just on the, let's see, third page, third paragraph where it says Vice Chair Frost asks if the downtown housed enough patron parking. This is a memory problem. I don't remember talking about that. What I remember is asking a question about whether about garbage bins and turning radiuses and all that other stuff and sighting of the garbage bins and the aesthetics and things like that, but I could be wrong. If you just check that.
And we both have gone over the minutes, and actually that was brought up as part of your discussion, Vice Chair.
Okay, so, but the reason I ask is I don't see anything in here, any comments about garbage bins, and I thought maybe it got transposed or something, so.
With a motion to approve with modification, we'll add a statement to that effect.
I also have comments. Okay. And maybe it's just because I'm getting old and don't remember. But what page would I call that? Page 2. Bottom paragraph, it says, Chairman Pranzo stated that a lot of pavement standards are in place to prevent storm water runoff. For the life of me, I don't remember that.
Mr. Chairman, actually, you did say something to that effect, and it struck me as a little odd also, but if we want to scratch it, we certainly can.
I thought it was pretty sophisticated for me.
I don't know about that, but
Okay.
we can certainly scratch the sentence if there's, issue with it.
All right, then.
So Larry, the recommended motion was for,
Well, it's up to you as the commissioners, but if you'd like to move to approve the minutes with modifications regarding the addition of statements on patron refuse, pickup, turning radiuses within parking areas, etc. And Mr. Chairman, if you'd like to scratch that sentence or
No.
that matter, the whole paragraph, that's up to you.
Actually, the minutes have been so good lately that I'm trusting them. But I'm not comfortable with approving with modifications because I have no way of knowing if those modifications get in.
We can certainly bring it back to the next meeting then with those modifications, and you can judge then.
Why don't we just make the changes and bring it back to the next meeting?
No problem.
I'll move that we disapprove the minutes as written. Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
All those in favor?
Aye. Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carried. And I really hate to do that because the minutes have really been.
Yes. Yes, very good minutes. Thank you.
I might note that these were the first minutes done by our new planner, Ms. Benitez.
Got to speak slower, my battery's dead. I'm trying. Okay, let's move right along. We got public hearing case PZ 1821 ORD. This is your favorite mine, small wireless facility tax text amendment. Do we have a presentation?
Chairman Pranzo, we do. And given that we have some public attendance, we'll go ahead and give a quick overview of portions of the presentation that you've already heard, but for their sake, have that information. So Chairman, this item, as well as the preceding public hearing item on your agenda, and then agenda item number 6A were combined in your staff reports and your staff packets, and that's how they'll be presented as well. And then as you roll through those different items, take action individually as you wish. So quickly, one only update, I just want to give a quick overview of the process in drafting this and getting us to this point today. Initially, all town staff and legal department reviewed initial drafts. Stakeholders were also provided a copy of the initial drafts for review and provided comment. And at that point, once we consolidated all that town staff input, as well as our stakeholders, we brought it forward to the Planning and Zoning Commission to begin the public review process. And we've held about 3 meetings to date, specifically on addressing these items. And then that public review has been ongoing. Just to give you some idea of the outreach that's been performed, and we have met all of our ordinances with regards to citizen input, as well as statutes, but we had a couple articles recently in Florence Blade that both discussed the proposal and small wireless, as well as pointed public to meetings, both a neighborhood meeting and then this meeting tonight. Also some social media posts, and then neighborhood meeting notices went out, and held a neighborhood meeting last Thursday night, the 12th. And we did have a small attendance and limited comment or discussion at that meeting. And now here we are at the public hearings. So again, quick overview. Number one, I think focus for this House bill legislation that was passed by the state back in March is to allow wireless providers to install and operate wireless facilities within town rights-of-way, town-owned property, without a zoning process, or creating a streamlined approach for wireless providers to enhance their antennas and capabilities in the rights-of-way. And it also did a few other things, or a number of other things, but set maximum fees that the town can collect. We can no longer do non-exclusive contracts for those types of facilities within the right-of-way. Also provided for an application process, and very specific in terms of what the town's obligations are and timeframes, and then also requires establishments of some terms and conditions that you've also reviewed. Really, again, the big point, it allows new poles to be constructed within the right-of-way up to a 50-foot building, 50-foot height, with some other details. And then it also allows for the antennas to be installed within the town right-of-way, either on town-owned property, like traffic signals, or their own monopoles, as long as it doesn't exceed 50 feet in height, and is under a certain square footage area or cubic area for those, the antenna and the appurtenances, ground mounted equipment. And that's the bulk of the legislation and what the real physical impact is. Here are 2 examples of the types of antennas that we would see. We did receive, I think you might have read in the paper, I've mentioned previously, the town has processed about 5 separate wireless applications over the last 3 years. They were very similar to the image on the right, on how they were mounted, basically antennas on light poles, both in the county complex as well as in Anthem Mare Ranch. None of those have been approved or constructed, and as of now, the permits are expired that were administratively approved when those came through. One point that was brought up at the last meeting was how these antennas might look in our downtown, in the historic area, which has unique light standards. I'll talk about the 2 light standards you have downtown. First, I think probably the most likely location a provider would want to locate is on this type of pole, your traffic signal and your mast armed light, street light. And you see a canister antenna on the image on the right that's above the mast arm that's sticking up. And that's basically a large cylinder. And then underneath that, you see the panel antenna, or the 3 panels that we're all probably a little more familiar with seeing on our larger installations, where that might go underneath the mast arm, or it could also be extended above. Again, as long as it doesn't exceed 50 feet there is no zoning review. The town is obligated to review and process that application. And then, more importantly, and I think to your point, more specific point, how would an antenna be mounted to these historic area, downtown street and sidewalk lamps? Because they have a top-mounted light fixture. That was a great question. I did some research. I did request our stakeholders who have been involved until late. I think they're generally have been satisfied with how the progress of the policy, so I'm not receiving feedback at this point from them, but I did ask or request photo simulations or how they would even address this if they would want to address installing an antenna on that type of light pole that we have downtown. Hearing nothing, I did some research and found the canister configuration you see on the right-hand side, and that's a newer kind of a very unique character, downtown character, walkable a street light or sidewalk light, and how that was performed. So that would be at the base. We would require that the applicant, should they wish to locate on one of these the downtown historic poles, that they replace the pole with something similar to this that matches the design of our existing light poles to maintain that integrity and character that's been established in our downtown. Another option I saw on top there is the screen directional antenna. And I thought that was an interesting technique. I saw that in a couple different scenarios where basically they put that antenna and use your sign banners that are mounted on the side of the signs to screen that antenna. If you recall, T-Mobile sent us one of the images that when I requested originally what types of applications they would be considering here, and could they provide us photo simulations, they provided us some images, as you recall, and this is one of their recent designs for a single antenna. That unit would be located in between two flags potentially. I think it's very unlikely that they would, that in the next 5 years we would see an application for something to go on that light standard. I think, like I said, the traffic signals or other poles, should there be even a demand in the next 5 years, that would probably be a more likely scenario or location versus dealing with these smaller light standards. Do you have any questions on that?
I'll open up to the commission.
I don't have any questions.
Is that your presentation in its entirety?
And then I'll wrap up the no, it's not. Sorry, Chairman Pronzo, I'll wrap it up. The other type of application that we anticipate would be the strand mounted, as we had discussed, where it's on overhead lines. One thing that the legislation excludes or requires zoning review is any pole or antenna mounted higher than 50 feet within the town rights of way or greater than those size areas. And then again, we're amending both the town code, the land development code, and we are providing terms and conditions also that would go along the licensing application for city council's review for licensing providers. And then again, you saw I won't revisit all of the specific code amendments. Be happy to dive in if questions do come up. But we do have some modifications to the zoning ordinance to help facilitate the application of this new legislation. That said, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
I'll open up to the commission.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, if I could, please, I have a few things. I spent a couple of hours and did a hard read on all this, and the first one is in Exhibit B in the code text, and it's under the section entitled Design Criteria 150-180.183.
183. 2. 83.
One more here, 182 now. Right there. under the subsection C, distance, a tower must have a setback. Does, not being ultimately familiar with all of these things, does this include the appurtenances on the tower? Based on what I'm reading here, it looks like a safety concern that if the tower falls over, then it's set back far enough that it won't harm anything around it. Does the tower include the appurtenances that get attached to it if it increased the heights of the tower?
Good question. As it's written, right. The intent was to make sure, should that tower fail, it will land within the property or not go beyond the property. So now, keep in mind, this is not part of any amendment that's proposed currently. This is your current code that we're talking about. If we received a request, so this wouldn't apply in the right-of-way. This legislation specific that if you do have a antenna in the right-of-way, there's no height separation or concern for a fall zone. That's specific in the ARS.
Right, this is for a tower.
Back to this, if we were to see a request come in on private property or that requires zoning review, we would look at that height setback in this provision and see if they're adding that additional 10 feet to add a co-location and it were to fall, and now all of a sudden it would fall off the property, we would bring it up as an issue.
Okay, and just a question, I didn't know if we needed to add the word, the height of the tower and its appurtenances. I didn't know if that was necessary or not, so I'm just throwing that out to the experts. And all of my next comments relate to the terms and conditions section. And there are several, like in definitions, right where they're at definitions, section 1.1, the second line. Site plans are capitalized, and if they're not defined, then it's my understanding they shouldn't be capitalized, so that's just a question on that one. And I have a whole bunch of those here, and rather than go through the minutia, if it's okay, Mr. Burkhardt, I'll just give you my notes, and you can just look at those. Okay. Does that work for you? Is that okay?
Very well, thank you. We'll review it, and I'll definitely follow up with you and make sure.
And then down on 1.3 there, the last sentence says, authority utility poles does not include a utility pole that is used for electric distribution. I think we have some other poles that are other things. Should it say for electric distribution or telecommunications? Do we have any poles in the town that are just exclusively for telecommunications, phone? I thought we might have to add, we thought we should add that in there.
Within the rights of way, I'm not aware of any existing for telecommunications, but we can let me take a look at that. We're starting to step into, I'll take a look and see if we have the ability to add.
I noticed there's some telecommunications that have their own distinct poles, and so just wanted to comment on that. The next page, subsection 1.13.2. Right there. Okay, this one confused me. Second line, it says not more than 28 cubic feet in volume or 50 cubic feet in volume. Guess we better make a choice on which one we want to. Got two volumes there. One of them is probably the right one, and probably erroneous.
Thank you. We'll strike that 50 cubic feet.
That's what I thought. Okay. Next page, subsection 1.18.2. Oh, went a little bit too far.
1.1A.
Right there. The last line from the bottom reads, or fiber optic cable that is other, not immediately. I think that the word other is supposed to be either. On the second line from the bottom. That is either not immediately adjacent to or directly associated with the antenna, not other.
Very good. Thank you. Make that update as well.
And then going on to section 4.9. Section talks about record drawings, as-built drawings, And it says that that the town will receive them if they request them, essentially, at the town's request. Do we want that? That's just my question is, do we want to have to request as-built drawings, or should they automatically come to us so they're part of our record set, immediately available to us? That's a question you probably need to ask the Public Works guys and engineers. So and with the way it's written here, we have to request them. Okay. Section 4.17. 4.17, the installations that we're looking at and the examples that you kindly showed us earlier shows these things being mounted on street lights. Street lights are not typically metered. So will the town's fee structure that we put together to allow them to be mounted on there include a fee, or are they going to have to put a separate meter on the side of our street light?
Yes, it is. It does discuss they're responsible for any energy that they're used, so be it a meter or a sub-meter of some sort, so we know what that's drawing. That is the
As I say,
provider's
street lights are not metered. They're just an agreement that you have with the power company.
right? So they would, I recall reviewing a portion that did discuss if a meter's not provided, it shall be required, or some way to know what the consumption is.
Yep.
That the
I just didn't know if that was figured into the fee structure that you're putting together for the council to approve, if there was going to be a non-metered, so we don't have an ugly meter sitting on the side of it. Just a question and a comment. Part 10, indemnification. Right there. When you went a little bit there, perfect. To the fullest extent permitted by law, licensee shall indemnify, hold harmless, and indemnified parties. But I cannot find the definition of who the indemnified parties are, even though it's capitalized. And it's again mentioned about 7 or 8 lines from the bottom. Talks about will hold harmless the indemnified parties, but it doesn't. There's not a definition for who they are.
good.
And then going on further down the page, section 11.1.1. Second line from the bottom, the operation of the small cell. Small cell is not a defined term in our documents, but small cell wireless facility is. I think you need to add the words wireless facility in there to make it correct. And then the next line that has or ground facilities, and that's capitalized, but ground facilities is not a defined term. And then jumping forward to 13.1.1. And it's a big long paragraph, probably about 7 or 8 lines from the bottom. You see the word capitalized in their terms, adoption of these terms, right about where your cursor is, just above that now. Adoption of these terms. I think what you're going to have to say is terms and conditions. That's what this document is entitled, is terms and conditions, not just terms. To make it correct. And then 4th line from the bottom, capitalized there, it says small cell equipment. I think to make it work with our definitions, we need to strike the word equipment and put small cell wireless facility. And then over on section 13.5 and 13.6. in the first line of 13.5, these terms, probably should be these terms and conditions. And then the second thing in the second location on 13.6 first lines where it says all remedies specified in these terms should be terms and conditions, I think, to be consistent with the document. And that's that, and I will give you my redlined comments here where I found a bunch of capitalized stuff that are just questioning if they should be capitalized because I couldn't find where they were defined terms. Mr. Chairman, that was all of my comments. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, now that Commissioner Frost has got all the elephants out of the room, I'm going to chase the mouse. And it's just semantics, but I want to make sure we're right because this will go to council. We use, for the first time in my knowledge, the Department of Development Services. Now, I knew we had a Development Services Director. So I went looking to see if we actually had a Department of Development Services. And the only place I can find it anywhere is on the very front page of our website. So I know this sounds hokey, but do we actually have a Department of Development Services that has been created properly administratively?
Mr. Chairman, that is an interesting question. It's referred to as the Development Services Department on the website and in everything in the town, but that was created before I got here. So how it was created, I couldn't answer to it.
See, we had a planning and zoning
Right.
department. We had a building department. And according to the definition, and this is just the front page where you get to push a button.
Right.
According to the definition, it really doesn't, it kind of does. I mean, it's playing games with words. It says, the title is Development Services, and then it says, this department. Okay. I don't want this going to council unless that really is a bona fide department. Now, my understanding is that was a line of management and that planning and zoning, or planning, and the building department fell underneath it. But I don't know if it's been created as a department. So let's investigate that before this goes to council.
Certainly.
I know, I'm chasing a mouse, but
You're just asking me a question I don't have a direct answer to.
I hate to sprinkle holy water on something that doesn't exist.
Well, and there has been quite a few changes since our new manager came aboard. So I'm not positive on that either.
Let's find out. That there must be an administrative procedure that creates a department and puts it somewhere in the chain of command with duties and responsibilities, a definition of what people are supposed to do. Let's see what we have before this goes to council.
Oh, that's a fair request, I think. Yeah.
Chairman Pranzo, if I could offer an option, if the commission's not akin to making a recommendation this evening, or if you are interested in making a recommendation to council this evening, considering that comment, if we could make that or consider an amendment that requires that whatever reference is in town code and in our current codes, that be used in place of development services, should it be different than the development services department. That way we make sure that we connect and have it titled correctly within all of our documents.
Yeah, you're afraid we're going to table it.
It's just a good option to
Yeah,
keep things going.
I follow you. It's up to the other commissioners. I don't have any problem with that. I just want to get the semantics right. If we're going to present new titles, then let's do it correctly before it gets out of this commission and gets tangled up somewhere else. So, Mr. Schauppel, do you have any comments?
No, I have no comments at this time.
Okay, so then we need a motion. So I will make a motion.
Chairman, if we could, I know it's a public hearing item. I'm not sure if when you're intending to
I
open up
usually
the public
hold-
hearing.
All right.
There will be one on 5A and 5B.
You're right,
We'll have a
you're
separate
right.
public hearing.
You're right. You're right, you're right. So I'll open it up to the public. Comments, any comments have to be specific to the small wires facility. Do we have any public comments? Yes, please. Please give us your name and address.
My name's Tom Moulton, and it's 5422 West Victory Way in Mill Ranch.
Mr. Moulton?
Thank you. The only thing I'm really concerned about is the health side of this new cell phone construction. I'm not looking forward to an antenna being outside my door, because the street light is right there at the 20 feet from my front door. And from what I've seen from I read from the results from Santa Rosa in California, they rose up and said, we're not going to do it. So they got them to stop it, and they didn't do it for health reasons. And it might be prudent that we take a look at that side, because you can always put it in, okay, if we know there's no health concerns. But if it's already in, then we find out we got health concerns, it's too late. So that's mainly what my comment wants to be.
I'll ask Mr. Burkhart to speak to that.
Thank you, Chairman Pranzo, Commissioners. With regards to health impacts related to wireless antenna installations, the town and FCC have not found conclusive evidence that there's a health-related concern. And for that reason, I processed similar types of wireless discussions and ordinances in other communities, and it was very specific that there is not conclusive evidence. So denying a proposal without having conclusive evidence of a health issue as a result of that would compromise the town or the city's integrity to make that decision, or ability to make that decision and hold in court. So for that reason, I know that, as you saw, some of those other examples, street light poles, applications that are really close to people and buildings and so forth, that's how they've been existing, and there hasn't been any direction or federal regulation or, like I said, a conclusive study that any interest can point to say you should deny this for a health-related concern. So for that reason, the statute doesn't identify, should a health-related concern be identified, then the town can deny an application or request. So we have to run with that understanding, what we know today.
Okay, I want to make clear to you what we're operating under. These rules and regulations, even though they're being adopted by the town, are mandated by the federal government and by the state. We don't have a lot of choice where we can say no. That doesn't exist. So we have to say yes, and we have to be careful about how we do it, where they're located. That's why we require permits before they're installed. And the aesthetics we're concerned about. Not only the aesthetics, but the structural integrity. And so we're trying to circle the wagon train, if you will, as best we can. There's nothing that's been brought to us that signifies a health risk. If something were to be blamed for a health risk, then the town would have recourse to remedy that situation. So I don't want you to think that your comments are falling on deaf ears. They're not. It's just that without something tangible in front of us, we have to move forward. I hope that satisfies your intent. Okay, so again, we're back to, or do we have any more public comments? Then I'll close to the public, and we need to make, unless we have any comments from the commission, we need to make a motion. I will move, this is Chairman Pranzo, will move to provide a favorable recommendation with the exception that on 120.05 application, paragraph B, and anywhere else in the document where it references the Department of Development Services, that staff verify that that is a department that has been adopted by council. If not, then we'll use the proper department name. Whew, that's long-winded. Do I have a second? Please, Mr. Frost.
If I could, please,
In a
Mr.
minute.
Chairman. And does this include the corrections that were voiced this evening?
Amend mine.
Yes, I would amend that just to include the corrections that were voiced this evening. And I will second that motion.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? And the motion carries with exceptions. Okay, moving right ahead. Case PZ 1822, ORD, Small Wireless Facility Text Amendment. This is the presentation, discussion, recommendation of a text amendment application by the Town of Florence, amending the Town of Florence Code and Ordinances Title 11, Business Regulations, to insert subsection 120, Small Wireless Facilities. This is where I should have really done that, but we'll keep moving. Do we have a presentation? No? So that's... We should have just encapsulated this all in one.
No, it is appropriate to do this in two separate motions.
Okay, so then really all we need is a motion.
Yes.
Covered it.
We need to open up the public hearing.
Yes, sir, I know. And I will open up the public. Do we have any public comments?
Good evening. My name is Alyssa Moulton. I live at 5422 West Victory Way in Anthem, here in Florence. I just have a question. What is the purpose of them?
I'll allow an expert.
See, I don't understand. I mean, we have wireless already. Do we need more?
This is just, how could I say it? They're boosters. Have you ever played with walkie-talkies? Have you, as a kid, did you ever
Okay,
have
yes,
walkie-talkies?
yes.
And if you got too far away, they didn't work.
Right.
Okay. Well, what this does is it makes too far away non-existent. In other words, it's a signal booster. You follow me?
Yes, I'm listening, yes.
Okay.
Okay.
So
okay.
that's all these do is boost the signal so that your cell phones work better. Faster. We need faster.
Okay, so would they be in the neighborhoods
Well, yes, they could be.
in front of your home?
Could be.
If there's a pole
Possibly.
there, yes, they could be.
And they don't impose any kind of a health risk? I mean, because,
Not to our knowledge, no.
but what do they operate on? Electricity or
Electricity.
some kind of microwave?
No,
No,
no, it's not microwave. It's
a magnetic wave?
it's magic. It's
It's just, I don't,
it's the same
I'm
way.
concerned about health issues, that's
Yeah,
all, you know.
it's not a radio wave in the conventional sense. It's your cell phone, if you will.
Which
Boy,
they
I
say
don't want to
they
get in the
prove it
weeds, but
helps.
I'm gonna get a little bit in the weeds so that we can both agree that we don't understand it, okay? And what it is it's not a science, it's a philosophy, because we don't prove it, we just use it. The way your cell phone operates is not necessarily on a radio wave. The way remember the AM, FM radio in your car? It's not like that at all, okay? It's something completely different. And that's about as far as I can take it. There's just,
Okay, is it a 5G?
well, it's 4G. And God help me if I know what that really means. You want to jump in, Mr. Burkhart?
If I could, get some quick, and I'll try and shed light and respond to your questions. Chairman Pranzo, if I
Yeah.
may. So they work off RF frequencies or radio frequencies and a certain bandwidth of radio frequencies so it doesn't interrupt your radio in your car. You know, the FCC regulates what bandwidths people can broadcast. So they work off electromagnetic frequencies or radio frequencies. And the purpose of this legislation, the state of Arizona was the first state to adopt this legislation to get in front of the deployment of 5G or fifth generation cellular technology. So we currently have 4G. You have it here in the community. You saw probably about 5 or 6 years ago, that really we began to see requests for that down here in northern Pinal County area to bring in 4G because it has the ability to broader bandwidth and carry more data and serve more cell phones and data requirements. Well, 5G is the fifth generation or the next generation of that. And why, one thing the industry's determined is that having more local applications of antennas versus these large every mile or so antenna is going to provide a better service and greater capacity, particularly in the areas that are demanding the capacity. So that's one of the reasons the state said, hey, we need to look at this as an essential public utility. So just like cable television and telecommunications and electricity and sewer and water, they're all in our rights of way. Why is this any different? We need to explain or require cities and towns and counties in every political subdivision of the state to allow these to be constructed within the right-of-way with as least amount of hurdles and red tape as possible. So that's what state legislation decided to do last March, a year ago last March. So that's what this is. So I don't know if they're broadening the frequency or how 5G is better in that way. I'm not too clear on those details, but they know more antennas in the community provide a greater capacity. And I think it's not that all of a sudden they're going to come out and start to locate in neighborhoods. They go to where for instance, we've had 5 approved, you heard me mention earlier, we've had 5 antennas approved in the last 3 years, and none of them were built. So it's Verizon requested them, we approved them. They were at key intersections in Merrill Ranch near the school, where you probably have a lot of cars stacking to pick up kids, and they're probably loading up the signals, plus the school itself, using signals. So they were kind of conveniently located either in a parking lot of a commercial center or the courthouse, was one, as well as the county complex, or at those key intersections. So they're looking to locate where they have a lot of demand, not necessarily on a local collector, a local road in your neighborhood.
Okay.
That's where it's at today.
So who pays for
So
it?
who knows? The provider pays for
taxes,
everything.
or-
Providers pay for everything. We have these terms and conditions, and we have a contract as part of this policy that basically says you're paying for everything. If you ruin our light, you replace it. If our light needs to be replaced anyway or moved, you're going to pay for it. And so the state was generous in that it said, hey, we're not going to make the cities and towns eat, this infrastructure and the costs of processing these things. So, but they did say we're not allowed to get $2,500 a month in rent in our right-of-way, like we were doing previously, prior to that legislation. Does that help? Thank you.
Okay, with that, I will close to the public. I still need a motion on case PZ 1822 ORD.
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion on case PZ 18-22-ORD in favor of a text amendment to the Town of Florence Code Title 11 Business Regulations to insert subsection 120 Small Business Facilities Ordinance number 663-18.
I second that motion.
I have a motion by Commissioner Frost, a favorable motion by Commissioner Frost, second by Commissioner Schapel. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carried. Okay, under new business. Presentation, discussion, recommendation of the proposed terms and conditions for small wireless facilities in town rights of way. Mr. Burkhart.
Chairman, Commissioners, this item does not require a public hearing. It's a separate
I
document.
saw it's new business, yes.
So just a recommendation.
Right?
Thank you very much.
Is there a presentation? No. Okay, when it says presentation. We've been through this. Can I get a motion, please? All right. I'll move.
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion as amended this evening, or as corrections provided this evening to the proposed terms and conditions of the small wireless facilities in the town's rights of way. A favorable motion in support of that at this time.
I second that motion.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carried. Presentations, future agenda items, information only. Mr. Harmon.
Mr. Chairman, members of the Commission, I know that we've had some cancellations over the last few months for lack of agenda items. That has been cured, and I wanted to kind of give you a heads up of some of the agenda items that are going to be coming up within the next few months. I don't see us, unless there's some extenuating circumstance that comes along, I don't see us canceling a meeting for some time yet. First of all, there's been a request by Community Services to allow the Planning Commission to entertain a joint work session on August 2nd with the Parks and Recreation Advisory Board regarding the first draft. It's kind of a status update on the pedestrian trails and bicycle master plan that's underway right now. Why that's important to the Commission is because this will be one of the sub-elements to the general plan update, which we should be going out on the street for a request for qualifications here, hopefully within the next 4 weeks. So this is something that the Commission needs to be current on as it progresses. The only real question at this point was, would you either have a separate work session at 5:30 with them, and then we convene the regular meeting at 6 o'clock, or just put it on the regular agenda and maybe make it the first item so that the Parks Board could be released. That's kind of your call on that particular one, and Mr. Chairman, you and I can talk about it offline to decide how to handle it.
I'll leave it up to the other commissioners.
I'm open 5:30 if we want to meet a little earlier that evening. That's fine with me.
I'm open as well.
Okay.
I'll
Then
go
we will
along with that.
agendize two different meetings that night. One would be a work session at 5:30, and the second would be a regular session upon the conclusion of the work session or 6 o'clock, whichever comes later,
All right.
in order to make that work.
Just a request.
Yes, sir.
I like work sessions to be informal. Yes.
Yeah.
Everybody downstairs looking at each other.
That's kind of what we had in mind, although they will be using the screen for the presentation, so it'll be kind of set up very similar to the way this room is set up currently.
Great.
Also coming up, probably on that agenda, there's been a lot of activity out in Anthem at Merrill Ranch, and there's been several preliminary plats that have expired and need to be reapproved by the commission before they can go to final plat with the council. One of them right now is scheduled for that particular meeting, and there's actually 3 more pending that'll probably come the second meeting in August. So those are moving forward. And there have been some minor tweaks to them that'll have to be explained when we bring them forward to you, but that'll get them on the right path. Apparently, there is interest by Pulte to start selling off development units to other builders. So this is an opportunity to bring some new builders into the community. Also coming up, as we've discussed earlier, we'll be doing a work session, an informal one, as we discussed, on the parking code. I'm expecting that to take at least an hour and a half to 2 hours, so it'll be a sole item agenda, a single item agenda when we get that scheduled.
Will that be a work session?
Yes.
Okay.
And then also the same thing with the sign code. We are taking the one that's been online as a draft and done a few tweaks to it based on some more recent legislation and practice, but we'll be bringing that forward also for a work session for the commission. That one also is going to take a certain significant amount of time also to make sure everybody's comfortable with it. And then both of those ultimately will be coming back as public hearings for recommendation to the council. We'll be setting up community meetings and all the things that go with both of those. So it's going to be busy for a while. Also, there's other code amendments, as you're more, very aware, besides just parking code and the sign code. So we'll be moving forward with those as necessary and bringing those forward as at least introductions and presentations, and then ultimately work sessions and public hearings. So we're going to be occupied for a while.
Sounds good. Does the commission have any questions for Mr. Harmon?
Not a question, but just a heads up, the meeting on the 20th of September, I will be out of town.
Wow. I might be out of town too.
As soon as you can confirm that, Mr. Chairman, let me know, and I guess we'll have to cancel one after all.
I will be here.
We do have to have a minimum of 3 of you.
Let me put it this way. Here's the vulnerability. Mr. Frost won't be here. I'm a candidate for town council. If by some very slim chance I actually get elected, I won't be here. August 28th.
We'll talk the day after the election and see where we are.
All right.
Okay.
Just for planning purposes, there's some pretty big holes up here.
Now, since you brought that up, we have been looking for candidates for the commission to fill the 5th spot. And
Are we advertising?
oh, absolutely. It's been advertised since Commissioner Bell resigned, and it's been on the website. And we're also doing word of mouth and just seeing what we can get on it there, but it's just been very weak at this point.
Just a suggestion, and I have no idea if it ever happens. Maybe our council member can tell us, but the council has a pretty strong following on council nights. Perhaps the council can solicit someone out of people attending council meetings.
Or make the suggestion, basically.
Yeah, that's just a suggestion.
I'm sorry, but I was having a hard time understanding what you were saying. If you get a little closer to your microphone, maybe.
What I was saying is we're having trouble getting people to volunteer for the commission.
Oh, yeah, we're having, yes, I think,
Perhaps the mayor,
Probably the Historical Commission and maybe one other's I think we've only got 2 commissions that are fully staffed. The rest of the commissions, I think, have openings, but we don't have people. Is that what you're talking about right here?
yeah, and all I'm saying is perhaps the mayor, as a part of current events, could make it known that we need people on the Planning and Zoning Commission.
We advertised, I forget when it was, but a while back, we had an ad in the paper, and I think it's on our website, our openings, but we have a heck of a time getting people to participate, and it's a shame, but one thing I want to make a comment while I'm speaking is I want to let these folks know that what you said earlier, I'm not real crazy about myself. I'm not real crazy about putting these on these polls, but that's something that the legislature passed, and we can't override the state. We're obligated to conform with that. We really have no choice. So what we're trying to do is, what little power we do have, we're trying to initiate it as the commission was doing tonight.
Thank you, Councilor.
Mr. Chairman.
Please.
Mr. Harmer, this might be a wild idea, but has there been any attempt or any consideration to try to fill one of the voids here with someone from Florence High School, maybe a senior who has intentions of going to college for planning, planning degree, or someone who is in some sort of a government program at school who might be enticed to have a year serving on the Planning and Zoning Commission for additional credit?
I don't know that would be legal or not. I'm not positive on that.
I'm pretty sure there's an age requirement.
Yeah, I'm not. We would have to check with the attorney. I really don't know. That's the first time I've ever heard that proposition. But
I know there's a couple of boards I serve on where we have students who are part of the board and make a valuable contribution to the activity.
no, I think it would be a wonderful. Yeah, I think it'd be great if it's legal, and
Yeah.
you know it's doable. But I don't know. I'm not. I don't know. That's like I say. That's the first time I've ever heard of a proposal on that. But no, I'm all for. It's like we've got our Florence Teen Council. We try to get them involved with what's going on in town and help educate them on how the town operates and everything. Yes, anytime we can go that direction, because the youth is the future. And no, I think it's a great idea, but I don't know that. I don't know.
I will check with the town clerk and the town attorney, and I'll take responsible for the fact that we're kind of way off topic and off agenda at this point.
Right.
Mr. Harmer, a person you could contact would be Richard Franco. He's Director of Public Relations for the Florence Unified School District. Or you can talk to the Superintendent, Chris Knutson, who is, he has the kids in his heart, and I'm sure he'd be willing to discuss it with you, and if it's possible, I'm sure he could offer up or get one of his staff to offer up someone who would be suitable to sit in with us to discuss these matters.
Okay, let's move on. Any more future agenda items?
I think that'll be plenty for right now.
Okay. So we'll move to call to the public. Commission response. Call to the public for public comment on issues within the jurisdiction of the Planning and Zoning Commission. Individual commission members may respond to criticisms made. They may ask staff to review a matter raised, or may ask that a matter be put on a future agenda. However, members of the commission shall not discuss or take action on any matter during an open call to the public unless the matters are properly noticed for discussion and legal action. And what that simply means is that you can comment on anything you want, but we can only respond to those comments that are directly related to today's agenda. Do we have any public comments? Now, close call to the public, call to the commission. Current events only. Do we have any current events?
No.
Okay. I will close call to the commission. May I have a motion to adjourn?
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion to adjourn this Planning and Zoning Commission meeting.
Mr. Chairman, I second that motion.
I have a motion by Commissioner Frost, second by Commissioner Schoppel. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? We are adjourned.